Hi, this is Autohaus Hamilton. I'm James and I'm here to talk to you today about car parts. Specifically, I want to talk about the difference, the distinction between genuine Porsche parts, OEM, that's original equipment manufacturer, and aftermarket parts. Typically when Porsche launch a new vehicle, they'll tell the manufacturers of components, and I'll be talking mostly about brakes and filters today. Porsche will tell the manufacturer of brakes and filters that those brakes and filters for a while should only be sold to Porsche and only be sold as a genuine Porsche item. At some point those restrictions will ease and the original equipment manufacturer will be able to sell their filters, their brake pads, whatever, into the wider market under their own branding. And at that point, for businesses like ours and for enthusiasts such as yourself, it becomes a whole lot less expensive to buy the items because you're no longer paying for the fact that it's labelled with the motor manufacturer's branding. And at the same time, what can also happen is another manufacturer, in the case of filters that might be Mann and Hummel, decide that they want to manufacture filters to satisfy that market, and they'll have a look at the OEM filter and they will make their own version of it, but it doesn't have any kind of blessing from the motor manufacturer. So under what circumstances would you use a genuine Porsche product, when would you use an OEM product, and when would you use something aftermarket? The simplest answer is when there is no option but to use a genuine item, that's what you use because you have no choice. So this part here, this is a transmission mount. This is a transmission mount for a second generation 996 or a 997 Tiptronic, and it's also used in 996 and 997 Turbo, GT2 and GT3 models. And if you want this particular transmission mount, your only option is to buy a genuine Porsche one. Generally though, there's a value proposition involved, and that is that it's less expensive to buy an OEM part. So filters, for instance, you can buy the exact same filter as a genuine Porsche filter, or you can buy it as an OEM filter, which is typically a Marley or a Marley Knecht filter. And they're exactly the same thing. So here I have, you can see this is a genuine Porsche filter, but if you look closely at it, you can see two other things. It's labelled as made in Austria, and it's also labelled with a number OC47. Those two things are big clues that this is a Marley filter. So unless you particularly wanted the Porsche filter because you want to see the brand looking at you from the engine bay, you'd buy a Marley filter and you'd be getting the same product in different packaging. If you buy a set of rear brake pads, for instance, for in this case a 991, these brake pads are genuine Porsche pads. You can see they've got the genuine Porsche logo, but if you look a bit closer you can see that they're also stamped with Techstar. So these were made for Porsche by Techstar. When it comes to brake pads for your Cayenne, in that case Paget are the OEM manufacturer, and here I've got a Paget brake pad, and you can see on the shim on the back we've got a Paget logo, but if you look a bit closer you can see it's also stamped Techstar. So even though it's a Paget pad, it would appear to be manufactured by Techstar, and I have the equivalent Techstar pad here, and to be honest I can't see any difference between the Techstar and the Paget pad in the same fitment. So the world of OEM and aftermarket sometimes gets a little bit opaque, and it's not always easy to see which is which. Another case where you might want to go aftermarket is if you want something that is a little bit different to the OEM or the genuine Porsche item. In this case, here's an engine mount or a transmission mount. It's the same thing for a 911. This is an OEM part, and I also have a Rebel Racing equivalent of the same thing. Now the Rebel Racing one is different in a number of ways. It looks nicer, if that matters to you. It's a little bit lighter, which for a part like this is probably inconsequential, and more importantly it's a firmer engine mount, so it's quantitatively and qualitatively different from the OEM part. It's not necessarily better, it's just different. That difference is of great use to you if you're spending a lot of time on track, because a firmer engine mount improves engine and transmission location in your 911, and that'll lead to better handling. You might not like it if you're using your 911 as an everyday driver, because it'll also add a little bit of harshness, a bit more noise, a bit more vibration coming through into the cabin from the engine compartment. You might also use an aftermarket item if there is no genuine or OEM equivalent. So this part here, which is disappearing against my black sweatshirt, this is what we refer to as a dunny lid. It's a valve that you put into the airbox of a 911 SC or a K-Jet 2.7, and the job of that is, if there's a backfire, this lid will open. Not too sure if you can see that. That lid will open, and the idea is that putting the safety valve there prevents the airbox from being blown apart in the case of a backfire. And sometimes you just plain avoid aftermarket, because some aftermarket items just simply are not as good in any sense as genuine or OEM. So there, we've talked about genuine Porsche, OEM and aftermarket, and looked at the differences between them. I hope you found this interesting. Be sure to leave comments if there's anything you'd like us to know from you, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, we'd like to hear about them. Thank you very much, and thanks again for watching.